Welcome back, boys and girls. And today I want to talk about cell phone mount. Now, I've seen a lot of videos where they recommend a big camera equipment where you put a mount on the tree and you can move it really nicely and freely. Only problem is you can't move and shoot at the same time. So in many of the videos, they would actually pick a spot and have a camera pointing at the spot and waiting for deer to walk in, and they have a lot of time and they could actually shoot and get a great shot. Only problem is in Virginia, that's not possible. We have so many woods and thick brushes, and they're constantly moving. And when you have them on the opening, we might have maybe 2 or 3 seconds. That's about it. So I had to find a way to have my rifle moving with my cell phone and get the shot that I needed. So I started looking into cell phone mounts that I could mount it on the rifles or crossbow. And I came across this mount by GameStick. And they mount right onto your scope. If your weapon has a scope on it, you could mount this on. This comes in 3 pieces, and you can see the spreading. Looks pretty cool, huh? And let me show you how they work. You can mount this on any scope that has about 1 inch room on the tube. You can mount it in the front or the back. I like to mount it in the front because of my aging eye. Also, when I'm running the action, this doesn't interfere with the empty breath ejecting. So I would recommend you to mount it on the front. So first, put that on your tube. And then you gotta put this. Now, this part goes facing forward. And start tightening the screw here. And make sure it's straight from the scope. And tighten it. There we go. And you gotta tighten it pretty tight, otherwise it's gonna move when you fire, depending on what caliber you're shooting. But even with 308, I found them to be moving a lot, so you wanna make it tight. At this point, you want to mount your cell phone. Make sure you're not covering the lens. Close it. And then mount it right here. It looks easy enough, right? But it's not easy as you think. The problem is, when you fire, this cell phone will fall off. So when I tested this out at the range before I went hunting with it, after firing at 308, this cell phone fell off and got cracked and scratched. And I was so pissed. But what do you do, right? So I called the company and asked them about the problem with their mount where cell phone is just falling out of it. And they told me they also provided rubber band that you could tie it around here and hold it together. And it's in the instruction, so that was my fault. So I got their rubber band and put them on, and I fired again. But it was still moving. It still wasn't holding right. So I went out and bought broccoli. Why the broccoli? I need the rubber band from the broccoli. This is really nice, thick and sturdy. So after getting my rubber band, at this point I had multiple problems as well. Now trying to tie the rubber band while I have my cell phone on it, this caused a lot of movement and could be troublesome. So that was one problem. So now what I do is I can put the band on before I climb the tree. Have both of the band on each side. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then I'll put my cell phone into my pocket like this. That way, I just have to go open the tree and just snap it on and you're ready. And the second problem was that right here at the hinge, I don't know if you could see it, right at the hinge, there's a ball joint where if you tighten this down, it will keep the cell phone at one position, so it won't be moving around. But they always tend to move around. So what I did was I tightened this really tight with vice grip. That again, don't do it too tight. You might crack the case because this is a plastic. But make it nice and tight, so it'll be kind of stiff to move around. Now, at this point, what you have to be very careful is that you can probably see this thin joint right there. That always breaks. So if you try to force the cell phone at one direction, and if that's too tight, that's gonna snap. In fact, I broke 3 of them and it drove me crazy. I didn't break it moving the cell phone, but at one time I had this standing on the range, and because of the weight of the cell phone, this turned and just fell on the bench, and with that small impact, that little neck snapped. And the other time was when I was hunting, leaning against a tree, and because of the weight, the gun turned and dropped, and that snapped again. So you do not want to carry this rifle with a mount on it. You should use this mount once you're up in the tree, and when you're done hunting, take everything apart, put it away, and come down the tree without the mount. Otherwise, any kind of tab, any kind of impact will snap that little neck there. So be careful of that. I mean, you could see they could make this a little bit thicker. They did some upgrades on this mount, but that thin neck is always the same, and that's what caused me to buy 4 of them. Once I'm up in the tree, this is the first thing that I do before anything. Now, if it's bright enough, this is where you could actually aim at certain tree or rock and adjust your camera so you'll be aiming the same point of impact with your scope. But a lot of times it's dark, so this is before I loaded my gun. So my gun is actually empty at this point. I would actually aim up the sky and find a branch, and you could actually see it really clearly, and you could see it to your cell phone and your scope, and make sure they're both aiming at the same place. And one more thing is that this thing tends to move a lot like this. So if you have something aiming like at this point and fire, this is gonna be knocked back this much. Even though that looks like a small tilt, that's quite a lot. After firing, when you're following the deer, a lot of times you're not actually catching the deer. So make sure you push your cell phone down like that and make sure you aim it at this point. So when you shoot, the impact's not gonna make the cell phone to aim upwards. As I mentioned, because this does have that much play here, I was not able to zoom in a lot. So I was zooming in probably 1.5 power, and my viewers were not getting a really nice picture of the deer that I shot. You could see the deer movement right there. Matt. So I needed to find something more sturdy where you won't play so much and I could actually zoom in closer. Except for the thin neck, it's actually pretty good. Now, one more problem with this type of mount is that when you have a short scope like this on your crossbow, it doesn't have a space to put the mount on. So I had to find something that could go on the lens in the front. And that was the very reason I wasn't able to self-film my crossbow hunt at the beginning. So up in the tree, I would actually have my camera mounted. At this point, I will make an introduction. Like, this is 7:30 and I'm ready to hunt. It is now 7:02 and I'm ready to hunt. After I shot a deer, flip the camera so he'd be filming myself. Okay, I just shot a medium-sized deer. If this mount was more sturdy, I could actually carry like this in the woods. But I never do that because that thin neck's gonna snap. And when you're up in the tree trying to mount this mount, you wanna take both gloves off because they tend to be slippery plastic. If they slip and fall on the ground, guess what? You gotta climb the tree back down. And worse yet, in the dark, you might never even find the piece. Now, after you're done mounting it, you wanna put your gloves back on and leave your fingers out so you can control the cell phone. Okay, when you're done hunting, you wanna take the rubber bands off and release your cell phone. Put it in your pocket and put this piece inside where the cell phone was. Tighten that so you will hold, turn it around, put this stick back here, and you don't want to do a double band, just do a single band so you will hold without breaking that little thin neck. And at this point you're ready. Just put this in your backpack and you're good to come down the tree. Now, even though I solved a lot of problems, I still had a problem with holding a selfie with left hand and holding a rifle with my right hand. Because except for the first time, the deer never showed up right in front of me where I could have my rifle sitting on the rifle rest and cell phone on my left hand and be able to shoot it. If they show up on my left or right where there was no armrest, there was no way I could hold selfie stick and the rifle free-handed and safely shoot at a deer. And there were times I actually tried this, using my left wrist as a rifle rest and holding a selfie, but even this was very difficult. So I needed to find a better way. And on the next video, we'll talk about that. And lastly, like always, thank God for what you have. Enjoy life with what you got. But mostly remember, life is full of problems. You just have to find the solution. See you.